So we're here today to train all of you to use data.youthbuild.org, which is also known as DYB. Before we dive into that training, let's make sure we're all on the same page about why DYB is important. Every program that's part of the YouthBuild USA affiliated network must provide program and student data as part of the licensing agreement. Grantees of YouthBuild USA, such as AmeriCorps programs or programs in the Mentoring Initiative or other initiatives, must provide data to satisfy grant requirements. Up until May, Webs2Q was the tool that programs used to report data. Now that tool will be DYB. All students who participate in your YouthBuild program, regardless of funding, should be entered into DYB. So here's what we're going to cover today. By the time the webinar is over, each of you will have a much better understanding of why we designed DYB and how it works. You'll have an understanding of the logic of the data system, and you'll be able to enter and correct data. We'll also give you an introduction to the reports in DYB and make sure you know how to access support through the help desk and through the resources in our new knowledge base. Those of you who have used Webs2Q know that the system was designed purely for reporting data. Each step of the reporting process had to be completed before the next one began, and it has been very difficult in Webs2Q to make corrections to old data. It was also really hard to share data entry work with multiple staff. DYB has been designed to correct a lot of that stuff and to allow for the best data management possible. Data entry and corrections can happen anytime rather than in one reporting window. The system has easy and flexible navigation. You can add the data that you have on hand and then come back later to finish. Multiple staff at your program can divide up the data entry work by student or by content area, and reports are accessible all the time. So DYB is really a data management system and not strictly a reporting system, but we will ask you to do one specific reporting thing every month, or every quarter, sorry. In order to satisfy our reporting requirements and to let YouthBuild USA know that your data is accurate, we'll ask you to verify your data once per quarter, and we'll cover that more in the training. So we've been building data.youthbuild.org for over a year, and we're confident that you will find the data entry and reporting process much simpler than Webs2Q. The good news, though, is that when you log into DYB, you'll find all your Webs2Q data waiting there for you. You can run reports on your old data and make corrections if necessary. If anything seems strange, DYB support is available to help you figure things out. Over the next several months, we'll be adding additional features, such as more reports and bulk data entry. We couldn't have gotten this far without the input of users from YouthBuild Philadelphia, YouthBuild Just to Start in Cambridge, Massachusetts, YouthBuild Camden, YouthBuild Worcester, and Isles YouthBuild in Trenton, New Jersey. We look forward to hearing what you guys think as well and getting more ideas for improvements and enhancements as we begin to get into using the system. So we're going to get logged in and let Curt walk you through DYB. So I'll pass things back to him.
Great. Thanks so much, Erin. So again, it's really great to see so many familiar faces on the chat list there. So welcome again, and thanks for joining this YouthBuild Data or DYB training. So what we're going to do now is share our desktop so that you can see what we're doing on our computer, and we're going to walk through data entry in DYB. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to really tackle the basics here. So we're going to show you how to log in, and the login page for DYB is data.youthbuild.org. This is the login page here, and we're going to just walk through logging in. And the first thing I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of is that Webs2Q users will log in with their existing username and password. So again, your Webs2Q username and password will work on DYB. You'll log in for the first time, however, and the system will ask you to reset your password just for security reasons. So if you were an existing Webs2Q user, you can immediately come to the login page, data.youthbuild.org, and log in, and the system will prompt you to change your password one time just for security reasons. And if you're an existing WebSTQ user and you forgot your password, you can always use that forgot password link at the bottom of the page. So let's just click on it just so that you can see. All it's going to do is ask you for the email address that you used when you created your account. You'll enter your email address, and the system will send you an email asking you to reset your password. So WebSTQ users will already have access to the system. And also, while we're on this page, let me just show you at the bottom of every page really quickly. You'll see that there's a link to the knowledge base, that question mark there with the help sign. And the knowledge base has all sorts of helpful documents and how-tos, things like that that will help you or support you in your data entry in DYB. And to the left of that, or sorry, to the right of that, is the DYB support contact information. So we'll be going over this again, but just to remind you, at the bottom of every single page, you've got ways to contact support and reach out for help. So with that, though, let's actually log in and take a look at DYB. Oh yeah, and for this training, we're actually using a test site. So the address in the bar that you're seeing is not actually the same address that you'll log in at. So you'll log in at data.youthbuild.org, but for this training, we're using a test site. So we're going to log in. And after you log in, this is what you'll see. You'll land on the program overview page. And now that we're here in our landing page in DYB, let's just take a little minute to talk about how the system is organized, how you navigate around, and how most pages work in DYB. So when you log in any kind of area that you're in DYB, there will always be a menu on the left-hand side, a menu of pages that will take you where you want to go. And these different pages have different subject areas or content areas. And any page that you're on will also have information on the top part of the page. So the bar at the top will have helpful information that matches the context of the page that you're on. And for example, we're on the program overview page right now. So at the top of this page, we're seeing information about our YouthBuild program here at the top. So we've got our program name, where we're located, and what YouthBuild USA initiatives we might be involved in, what our affiliation status is, and if we had a round of DOL funding, what was the last round of DOL funding. So a lot of information really at the top of the page in any place that you're in DYB. But let's just take a quick tour of this program overview page to see what's on here. Because this really is kind of your starting point in DYB. And every time you log in, you'll look at this page and you'll see summaries of your student and program data here. So you'll see the student data summary and the program data summary here. You'll also see your data verification status, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, and Erin alluded to it earlier. And down at the bottom, we'll see on the left-hand side 2 dials of current program outcomes, and on the right-hand side, we'll see a list of recent changes that have been made in your DYB data. So if I can just dig into the program dials just for a second here, or the outcome dials. These 2 dials on the left show 2 important outcomes of your current program year. So we're talking about high school equivalency or diploma attainment and placement. And by default, these 2 outcome dials that you see will include all students who've exited your YouthBuild program from October 1st through the current date. And the reason for this is to give you a picture of how the students in your current YouthBuild program year are progressing or performing. So later in the training, we're going to dig into reports and show how you can change that default year or even look at particular groupings of students. But for now, let's consider these 2 dials a snapshot and know that we'll dig back into reports and other ways to look at your data later. On the right-hand side, you've got recent changes. So this might actually be very important for people managing data entry at your YouthBuild program. So what you're seeing here is kind of a running list of the last changes made to students in the system. So this might give you, kind of an important view as to what's going on in your program as far as data entry is concerned. So, that can be really important feedback for you as you're doing this work in DYB. And if you're tracking users or if you're tracking data entry, it might make sense for us to start immediately on the users page. So if you've got other staff members that you want to start helping you with data entry, and DYB, as Erin was saying earlier, is a really open system and allows for multiple people to be entering data at the same time, it might make a lot of sense for you to have more users. So let's click on the users page here on the left-hand side, and let's just add a new user. So here, after you click on the users page, you should see a list of all the users for your program. So all users from Webster-Q have been imported or migrated into DYB. So when you log in, you should see a list of familiar names here. And if any of those usernames listed here are for staff members that are no longer at your program, it's pretty easy to remove them. So you might want to do that as well. But all existing Webster-Q users are imported into DYB and have access to DYB. But right now, let's actually just walk through creating a new user. Let's say you've got a new staff member. So let's click on the Add User link at the top right. And the form is pretty simple here. We're going to enter an email address for this user, and we're going to designate if this user is a director of our YouthBuild program. And then we're going to actually designate the user access for this user. So the different types of access that we have here are restricted, view only, data entry, and admin. And the most common ones that you will use are the data entry and admin. And an important thing to note here is that the admin role is the only role that can manage program users like we're doing right now. And because DYB stores personal information about your students, you should be sure to keep your user list current and delete anyone who no longer works with your program. And you might also want to try and keep the number of admin users to just 1 or 2 so that you can carefully manage who has access to your system and who your users are. But for this example, let's actually make this staff member an admin and click Save. So when you click Save after completing this form, a welcome email from YouthBuild Data with a link to create their account will be sent to that user email address. And once that user opens up that email or clicks on that link, they'll be able to create their account, create their password. And once created, only those users can then change their own email and password. So admins actually can't change passwords for other users. And it's really easy to do. So once that user would log in, they could change any of their account information by clicking on the gear in the bottom left-hand side there. So if we click on that, we can see that we've got our user information here, and we can edit basically any of it at this point. And if you have a user at your program who forgets their password, again, make sure that they use that forgot password link on the login page. So pretty simple so far. That's a really quick tutorial about how to just create users and make sure that everyone who's going to be entering data in your YouthBuild, in your DYB system will have access. So make sure that you have user accounts for everyone who's doing data entry and that you're not sharing user accounts. But with that, let's actually go back to the program overview page and just talk about the sections here on this page a little bit more in depth. So in the overview section of this page, this is where the system will let you know what data you have in the system and where you need to start working. So the first section here is the student data summary. And this section lists the different types of students you have in the system and whether they have outstanding questions that need to be answered. And the way the system is letting you know this is by that issue count next to the type of student. And you can see here that next to in FollowUp, there's one issue outstanding for that for that group of students. So the issue counts are letting you know that some information in the system needs updating or some questions need answering. So if you see a number, that's the number of questions that are needing an answer in DYB. And if you see a green check, that means that there are no issues for that type of student. And you can see on the active students list that there's a green check mark there. So we have no outstanding questions or questions that need answering for those students. But for in FollowUp, we do have one issue there. So that means that one student has a question missing on their page. So you'll also notice that the list is broken up by student type. So you'll see active students and in FollowUp here. And just so that we can clarify here, active students are currently in your YouthBuild program, and in FollowUp are successful exits that are still in their 1 year of their follow-up period. And if any of your other inactive students have outstanding issues or questions that need answering, they will also show up here as well. We're just not seeing them right now. And in the student data summary is meant to help you figure out what might need to be done in DYB. So this can really be seen as your to-do list. So the issues show you which groups of students have outstanding questions, and you can click on any of these lists to jump right to a page that shows you a list of those types of students. So, this section right here will really direct you as to what you need to do in DYB. The next section of the page is a program data summary. This section shows you information about your program model, and if you've got issue counts here, it's letting you know you have to update information about your program model. And because some of these questions are new in DYB, when you guys log in, you'll all should see some issue counts here. You'll have some questions that need answering. So overall, this page is really trying to give you a guide of what you have to do in the system and what you need to do based on the previous data entry that's been entered into the system. And that's kind of one of the rules that we're trying to set up here with DYB. The way that the system is really consistent is that when you enter new data into DYB, DYB will present you with additional questions relative to what you've entered. And those additional questions will be represented by those issue counts. But to really get a thorough understanding of what this really means, let's actually go through entering a new student. So when we're going through data entry steps, that's really where we'll see how this logic makes sense in the system. So let's click on the Students page on the left-hand side. And when we click on the Students page on the left-hand menu here, we actually get put to this page with all of our student lists. And what we're seeing on this page are all of your previously entered YouthBuild students. And you can split these students up into different student lists by using the links at the top of the columns here. So the first list that we have here is all students. So this is every student that was ever entered or imported into DYB from Webs to Q. So most of you will have students in this all list already here that were brought over from Webs to Q. The next list here are students with issues. So these are students that are needing answers to some questions. So this might be a good place to click and just see what students are missing questions in the system. And really, this could contain any type of student, active, in FollowUp, or inactive with questions that need answering, any student at all that needs answers to questions in DYB. The next list here is in FollowUp, and these are successful exits that are in their follow-up period. Filtering by this list may serve as a to-do list also, in the same way that the program overview page might. So you might have a case manager that's only dealing with follow-up data, and it might make sense for them to just use this list to enter follow-up information for those students in follow-up. The next list is inactive, and inactive are successful exits that are no longer in their follow-up period, and any other students that left the program without exiting successfully. So you can kind of filter all of your students by these different lists, and you can also search for an individual student in that search bar at the top of the page. But we're actually here to actually enter a student, so let's click on Add a Student in the top right. So when we click on the Add Student link, we're really only presented with two fields. We're being asked, what's this student name, and what's the enrollment date for this student? And as Erin said before, all of your YouthBuild students should be entered into DYB. And so the enrollment date for your YouthBuild students should be the date that those students receive or start receiving YouthBuild programming services. So, you would not or should not enter applicants into DYB. You'd only be entering enrolled YouthBuild students. And all the students you enter here will be considered enrolled in your YouthBuild program. So we picked an enrollment date, we entered a name, and we're going to click Add. So after we add that student, we immediately see that that student is added to the All list and to the Active Student list. And we also see that there are issue counts next to the name of that student. And you can see that 16 issues or questions are outstanding for Sophia. So this logic will always hold true in DYB. This is a very consistent principle of the system. When you enter new information, such as a student or a placement, DYB will present you with different questions relative to that information you just entered. So the counts will go up to show you what questions need to be answered. So to get a deeper kind of look at what questions come up and what a student record looks like, let's click on this student from the All list. So let's click on the student's name. That will open up that student record. and we actually land on that student's overview page. And on this overview page, you'll see a lot of great information for that student. So at the top of the page in their bar, you'll see that they were enrolled May 1st, that they've got no placements yet, they've got no high school diploma attainments or equivalency attainments, and no certifications. As we go through this training, you'll see that top bar start to get populated with more and more information. Then in the overview section, we see different kind of snapshots of all of their data pages here. So we see kind of high-level information for the overview page, for placements, for credentialing attainment, and you'll also see issue counts here. So like in the profile section, for example, you'll see that there's 14 issues outstanding here, and that 14 issues matches the 14 on the profile page count to the left. So really you're seeing summaries of the student data that needs to be entered for this student. So while we're here though, before we actually dig into any of this actual data entry, let's just talk about the different pages really briefly and what might be entered on those different pages, just to give us a better kind of context here. So the profile page will be used for entering primary demographic information and some criminal justice information. The enrollment page will have the enrollment date. It'll have exits, leaves, and returns. We'll dig into that a little bit more as well. Contact information will have primary contact information for this student, like a phone number or an email address. The education page will be used to enter basic skills tests, at entry credentialing like high school equivalency attainment or GED attainment, either at entry or during the program. We've got the certificates page. Certificates are where we're going to enter any certificate that our student attains. We've got the activities page, and activities are where we enter YouthBuild initiative specific activities, and we'll dig into what that means a little bit later as well. We've got AmeriCorps slots. So if your YouthBuild program is an AmeriCorps program, you would manage your YouthBuild AmeriCorps slots here for your student, assign a slot, hours, things like that. And then the placements page. And on the placements page is where you would enter any type of job or education placement. So with that kind of larger context for what different types of pages you have for a student record, let's go to the first page here. Let's go to the profile page and look at those 14 outstanding issues here. And before we dig into any of these questions or any of the different answers we might be giving, let's just take a moment to really understand how this page works and how entering data in DYB and how saving data in DYB behaves. Because if you understand how to save and enter data on this page, you really understand how to do it on every page in DYB. So all of the forms and all of the ways that data is presented to you in DYB is very, very consistent. So they all follow the same rules. And so what we're seeing on the left-hand side of the page is that there are issue counts. So we've got 14 outstanding issues on this page. And what we're seeing in the actual form is that some of the questions are highlighted blue. So if a question or anything in DYB is highlighted blue, it's saying it's needing attention or it needs an answer. And the way that we would get into this form to enter that information is simply by hovering over the form and clicking into it. So, there's a lot of different ways to answer questions here. There's radio buttons, there's data entry fields, things like that, but it's all pretty intuitive and kind of clickable, if that makes sense. So what we're doing now is we're going to enter just a bunch of information for this test student in our system, just to get a sense of really how DYB behaves and how you enter data. So we've got calendar functions, we've got question marks all over the page with help text. We've got multiple checkbox ability for some of these questions. And once we answer something in DYB, we see that blue highlight is removed, and it turns to gray. So again, blue highlighted questions need attention in DYB. And as Candice is going through and entering this information, we're seeing that we're hitting a lot of questions, but so far our issue counts have not gone down yet. And we'll see those issue counts go down as we start to save data in the system. So we're clicking Save on that form, and you notice that we didn't enter all of the questions, we answered some of them, and as we click Save, our issue count went down to 4. So we answered a lot of them, but we still have some outstanding questions. And again, while you're on this page and as you start to do data entry, just click around the page and see what's available to you. There's a lot of different help text things going on here. There's question marks. There's ways to save things partially. There's ways to answer some things unknown if you don't know the answer. So take a moment to really just figure out how this page works, because this is how the whole system works. So you can see Candice finished that big block of questions here, but we're still missing one question on this page. So we're going to scroll down and just try to find that question that's highlighted blue. And it's the criminal justice question here. And you can see we can also get into the form by hovering over the edit button. But you can also just click right into the form as well. So we answered all of those questions on the profile page. We got our issue counts down to 0. So maybe it makes sense to also just talk about the types of questions that are being asked here. And so we're kind of taking for granted that you all have a common understanding of what these questions are and that they all kind of make sense to you. And for those of us that have been reporting for a long time, these questions are probably kind of run-of-the-mill and not too surprising. But if you're new to YouthBuild reporting or new to YouthBuild USA and the data requirements and you have questions about it, please reach out to the help desk and we can give you better context. And also the knowledge base will be able to do that as well if you've got questions about different subject areas. But so we saved information there. We saw green confirmation banners as we saved things. We saw the issue counts go down. We've got no more outstanding issues on this page. So maybe it makes sense now to actually go to the education page and take a look at what 2 outstanding questions are there. And like I said before, on the education page, we're really entering a lot of primary educational information about this student. What math and reading grade levels they came in at, and all programs are testing their students as they come into their program. So let's just, to show how DYB behaves again, let's add a reading grade level and a math grade level here. And so we're entering a grade level and a date that student took the test. We're going to save the reading test. We get the green confirmation bar at the top of the page. The grade level is immediately converted into an educational functioning level. Very, very simple, saves very easily, not very many questions asked. So let's just go ahead and add a math grade level as well. And it's really the same exact form here. And as you're kind of seeing, the way that DYB behaves and the way that these forms behave, we're going to move a little bit quicker so that I'm not just repeating the same things over and over again. But let's say, the reading grade level that we added was incorrect here. The way that we edit information in DYB is really easy. We just click back into that form and change that information. And that goes for any dates in DYB. Any scores, any numbers at all, you can always edit everything. You just click back in, edit the information, and save it. There's never any point in which you can't go back and correct something that was not correctly entered. So maybe one more thing to show is let's add one more reading test here. Just the way that DYB organizes the basic skills tests. So what it's doing is basically organizing the test by test date. So you don't have to designate pre-test or post-test. DYB kind of does that automatically. And let's say you needed to delete a post-test. That test shouldn't have been entered for this student. Again, hover over it and use that remove button. So, all of the deletion functions or removing functions will be in red and probably down to the lower right for any form. So we just entered basic skills tests for this student as they came into our program, but you can see we still have 2 issues here on this page. So let's go through and just satisfy those other 2 questions in DYB. And you can see it's asking, did the student come into the program with a high school equivalency or a diploma? We're going to say no. We're going to designate the post-secondary goals for this student. Our issue counts are going down, we're getting confirmation pages, and we've got nothing outstanding still on this education page. So let's actually just go to the certificates page as well and just walk through entering a really simple certificate here. And again, it's a very simple form, but this page, because we haven't entered anything yet, doesn't have anything on it. But for an example, let's just add an MC3 certificate for Sophia here. So the form, hopefully this is all looking fairly familiar to you at this point. We've got a drop-down menu with a pretty extensive list of certifications. But if the certificate you're entering isn't in this list, you can also use that other box at the bottom. But for this example, let's actually enter that it was an MC3. And we're going to choose the date. And we're going to click Save. So a very, very simple form, but I do want to demonstrate one thing. Let's click on that certification and just open it up. I just wanted to show you that DYB is actually adding extra information after you saved this MC3. So it's designating this type of certification as a construction certificate, and it's also designating that it's industry recognized. So there's other information that DYB will just kind of fill in for you if it knows exactly what you're talking about. So also you'll notice, since we've entered a certificate, it's now actually present in our students bar at the top of the page. And if we roll over that star, we can see that certification listed there. So a lot of really kind of quickly accessible information about our student at the top of the page. So with that, again, fairly straightforward data entry here. The forms are all behaving the same, and the issue counts are behaving the same. But with that, let's just keep kind of going down these pages and just look at some more data entry. So let's look at the activities page. So YouthBuild USA tracks activities that are central to specific grants and initiatives. And tracking these activities is done on this page. So if your program is in the mentoring initiative, for example, you may come to the activities page and add one of these mentoring activities. So really, these activities are specific to a YouthBuild USA initiative. And if you're in mentoring, for example, you may want to designate that a student was receiving mentoring services. So we're going to enter mentoring, pick a date, enter a couple of the subsequent questions here, and click Save. Confirmation bar at the top, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Let's take a look at the placements page as well. So what we're doing on the placements page is adding job placements and educational placements. And just so that you get a sense of the forms here, let's just add a job placement for Sophia. So we're going to add an employer name and a start date. And again, it's a very, very simple form up front. And just because this question has already come up a couple times, you can backdate a job placement if you didn't get information about a student's job placement until later. Whenever you get that information, you can backdate it in the system, enter it, no problem. But you can see after Candice saved that form, though, that 4 issue counts came up on the placement page. And you can see that 4 next to the actual placement on that placements page. So let's click back on that placement and look at what subsequent questions are coming up for this placement. So DYB is basically saying, please tell us what type of job this is, whether or not it was full-time employment, and what the starting wage was. So the system, again, is always going to kind of give you cues as to what's still outstanding. And, the forms are really all behaving the same. And there's a lot of kind of help text all over the page. Again, I just encourage you guys to just kind of scroll around and look at what's available. We're not going to be able to cover absolutely everything that's in DYB during this training. So please just kind of discover what's in the system. But up until this point, we really added a student, added attainments, kind of filled out a lot of the general data entry that you do for any program, for any student at your program. But what we should take a look at now is actually entering an exit, like a successful exit or an unsuccessful exit. And the way that we exit students from DYB is on the enrollment page. So let's actually go to the enrollment page. And on the enrollment page, that's where we actually enter exits or leaves from our program. So when a student leaves your program, you'll come to this page and fill out this information. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go through just a couple of different scenarios. So when we add an exit or a leave, we're going to first take a look at adding an unsuccessful exit. So whenever a student exits your program, we're going to choose the exit type from this pull-down menu that best describes or matches the reasons for this student leaving your program. But for this example, let's say that this student moved from our service area. So we're going to say that the student moved from our target area of program. We're going to pick the date, and we're going to say that our student enrolled on May 1st and then left shortly after because they moved. So we saved that, and now we kind of have a narrative on this page. We see that the student enrolled on May 1st, then moved away on June 1st of 2014. So let's say actually that this student moved back shortly after. The way DYB handles this is that you would add a return date for this student. So let's add a return date for this student and say that this student returned July 1st, 2014. So very, very simple fields here, and what we're getting is actually a lot of really good information on this page. We're seeing that the student enrolled, they left our program, then returned to our program in July of 2014. So, I just want to point this out because this is a significant simplification of doing this. And this hopefully is making a lot of sense to you. And all this information will be contained on this enrollment page. And there's no other steps you would have to take for this type of scenario where a student leaves your program and comes back. But since we've done this, and we've got this narrative here where the student moved away for a shorter period of time and then came back to the program, let's now walk through entering a successful exit for this student. So again, let's add an exit or a leave on this page. And just, if I could speak briefly about, exit standards and what the affiliated network is using for standards here. And YouthBuild USA primarily considers students who attend and complete the entire YouthBuild program as successful exits. However, we know that there are other paths to successful exit for the young people at your program. We just want to have you consult the Affiliated Network Program Design and Performance Standards Handbook for more guidance on this. And really, again, when you're looking at that pull-down menu, you should always choose the exit type that best describes how that student left your program. But we're entering a successful exit, and we're choosing a date, and we're going to click Save. And so immediately after successful exit, you can see that other issue counts are being asked of this student at this point. So let's actually just go through all of these outstanding issues and enter that data so that we can resolve all of the issues for the student. And right on this page is asking for some very primary information about the student and what they did at your YouthBuild program. But we can see on the left-hand pages menu that the profile page has some outstanding issues and the education page has some issues. So let's go to the profile page and look at those. And if we scroll down, we're looking for the highlighted blue questions basically. So we've got a couple here. We've got registered to vote and basically an update on criminal justice information for the student. So basically, DYB is saying, okay, this student was a successful exit. Can you just give us some information about these two subject areas or content areas? And so for, did this student become court involved? We can say no involvement, but there's other options here as well. We're clicking Save. We're getting the confirmation banner, and our issue counts are going down. So we've satisfied all those questions for the profile page, but let's actually go to the education page now too. So DYB, upon successful exit, is just also going to say, did the student attain any credentials while at the YouthBuild program or after enrollment? And we're going to say if the student got a GED. We're going to click Save. Our issue counts go down, and we can see that we have no more issues on the education page. So we'll also notice, though, that since we've exited our students successfully, that the FollowUp page is now appearing on the left-hand pages menu, and that there's issues on it. So all successful exits will need to have FollowUp entered for them. So your program will follow up with your successful exits for a year into their into their follow-up period. And really what that means in DYB is that you'll be expected to update their placement information and other criminal justice information on a quarterly basis. And let's look at what these issue counts and what these questions really look like here. Because what we're really doing is we're verifying that placement information is still correct, or changing it if it's not correct. And let's say for this example, we're just going to say that this student Sophia is still at this job because it is the best place to work. So we should all hope to work at a place like that. So we're going to verify that yes, as of March 31st, 2015, that this placement is still correct and still active, and we're going to click Save. We can see that now our kind of section there for that placement is saying that we verified it March 31st and that there's no follow-up needed until July 1st, 2015. So the system is kind of giving you feedback here about when the next time you would need to follow up with this. And then the next field here is just basically a follow-up question on criminal justice information about this student. So it's just the system is asking you, was there any court involvement for this student? And we're going to verify that no, that there was no court involvement for this student. And we're going to pick a date. And so we're verifying with the same date, but you could verify different pieces of data with different dates, and you could verify multiple times, whatever your schedule might be, and whatever, if you've got multiple case managers with contact with students in their follow-up period, you could always update that information as soon as you get it. You'll also have a little bit of a log history at the bottom of the page showing you about the different times that you verified follow-up issues. And if you're missing placements, you can use that link at the middle of the page to go right to the placements page for this student and enter a placement for that student that might be missing. But we're not going to do that, but I do think it's important to, again, scroll up to the top of the page and just look at the different pieces of information that are in the top bar for this student. So we've got the enrollment, we've got the exit date, we've got type of exit successful, we've got all sorts of outcome information at the top of the page that you can roll over and get information about. So really a lot of great information on the top of the page for your student. No matter where you are in the student record, you'll have kind of access to that to roll over that. So, but we can see in our student record, though, that we've got no more issues to resolve. So before we go any further, I just want to go back to the program overview page and just take a look at our data, see what the system is telling us on the overview page, and if we have anything else left to do in the system. So it looks like we still have one issue on a student in follow-up, so I'm going to click on the in follow-up link, take a look at that student with issues, and I could do that either by clicking on the list with issues or just looking for that student with the 1 next to their name. So let's open up Michelle's record and just update the missing question, and it looks like it's on the profile page. Great, so we saved that question. We've got no more issues on this student, and if you go back to the program overview page, we can see that we've got green check marks there, which is awesome. So we've done everything that the system is alerting us to. And up until now, we've really just been doing a lot of student data entry, and we've really been relying on the system to show us the questions that need answering, with a kind of goal of getting all of the issue counts down to 0 for the entire system. And the issue counts are a great tool to help guide you, but the system itself can't really know everything that you need to enter. So checking your data, even if you have no issues to resolve, should really be a big part of how you do your work in DYB. And that's, again, really because issue counts can't really tell you if you're missing a high school diploma entry for a student. That really has to come from you checking your data and making sure that it's up to date. And there's 2 really kind of powerful tools in DYB that help you organize your students into groups and then check outcomes. So those 2 tools are tags and reports. And let's talk about tags first. So sometimes you'll need to work with a subset of your students, and tags are the tool in DYB that let you group your students or let you organize them. So let's go to the students page. And on the students list, it's really kind of easy here to see that there are gray tags on any given student. And these gray tags are called system tags. And these are automatically assigned to students based on their activity, their participation in an initiative, or their status as a student. And in addition to system tags, DYB will also allow you to group your students by using tags that you can create yourself. So to do this and to kind of illustrate this, let's drill into the student we just created today, Sophia. So let's open up her student record, go to her Students Overview page, and at the bottom, you can see the tag section here. So you can use tags to group students in any way that's really useful for your program. So you may want to divide your students into teams or assign a case manager tag, and really this is a tool for doing it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on the Add Tag plus sign, and if you want to add a brand new tag, what we would do is just type the name of the tag that we'd like to call it into this window here, and we keep using teams and letters. So let's go to Team Y. That may or may not make sense, but we're running down the alphabet here, and we clicked on the Add. So what we just did is we added a brand new tag to the system and to this student. And once we do that, we see that this student is tagged with Team Y, and that Team Y tag is now available to use for any other student. So you could go into another student record and add that tag. So let's click on the plus sign one more time to add another tag. If you have existing tags in the system, all you would need to do is just choose it from the list that pops up immediately. And if the tag that exists does not show up in that list immediately, you can start typing into that window there, and it will organize your tag list and bring up the tag that you're trying to add. So that's a very kind of quick way to add a tag, but let's actually go back to the students page. So another really powerful aspect of that, and we can see Sophia's record there with Team Y and the light blue tag there. But one other really powerful thing about this page is you can edit tags right from this page or a student's page. But on this list page, you can go in and edit, and let's say we should not have added Sophia to Team Y. So let's actually delete Team Y from Sophia, and we do that by clicking on the X next to the tag. And then let's say we should have added them to Team Z, which I think is still available. So we're going to select Team Z or start typing. We immediately added that student to Team Z, and then we're going to click Done Editing. So you can do that from a student's page, or it might make more sense to see all of your students together and start editing here to see what's what. And another really important part of this page, though, is that you can filter by tags at the top of the student's page. So let's click on the plus sign next to Filter by Tags, and let's actually search by program year 2013-14. So Candice is just going to start typing 2013, and that program year will show up. So we searched for students in that tag, and our results are 8 students. So that's 8 students in our program are in that tag. So we could also have searched for any number of teams or any user-created tags that we've entered into the system. So you can add students to tags, you can create them, edit them, group your students in any way that makes sense. But now that we know that there are ways to organize your students in the system, let's take a look at the reports. So let's go to the reports page. And what we're seeing here on the reports landing page is the first wave of reports that we're launching with in DYB. And we'll be adding new reports each week throughout the summer, such as a student demographics report, one for every AFNet performance measure, and reports for initiative data such as AmeriCorps. But today, let's look at these first 4 reports for the AFNet's long-term performance metrics. And by default, the outcome dials that you see on this page and on the program overview page include all students who've exited your YouthBuild program from October 1st through the current date. And the reason for this, again, is to give you a picture of how the students in the current YouthBuild program year are progressing. And on each individual report, you'll be able to change that default group to look at past years or different groups of students based on the tags that you've created or the 6 system tags that we provide. So let's actually click on the AFNet report link at the bottom here so I can show you what I'm talking about. So instead of looking at this year's outcomes, let's take a look at the outcomes for last year. And to do that, we would just delete the existing tag here and add the tag that we want. And here again, we'll just search for 2013-2014 so that we can look at last year's program year. And as we do that, the color of the dials changed based on whether or not the outcomes are in the good or above, needing attention, or unacceptable ranges of the AFNet performance measures. The AFNet standard is marked on the dial by the red tick mark, and the black arrow shows you the AFNet average for the year in question. And after you've looked at the dial, you can drill into each of these reports by using the View Details link to see what students and outcomes are included in your metric. So just to dig into these reports, let's first look at the literacy and numeracy report. So these reports have a common language and common features, and I just wanted to point out how they kind of present data to you in a systematic way. So there's a question mark at the top right of the page that shows you how this metric is built. So it tells you how it's calculated. And you can see which tag was used to run this report at the top of the page. And you can change it right there if you need to, or edit the tag. And below that, though, are all of your students and the outcomes associated with this metric. So what we're seeing here is a list of students and whether or not they gained either in math or reading, so either, or gained in reading or gained in math. And you can hover over any of these check marks to get information about those attainments or those outcomes. So a lot of really kind of very powerful, quickly accessible data here, a very good list, and different ways of seeing your data. So for example, Sarah Santiago has an NA down below, and that means that Sarah came in at a grade level above 10th, so they didn't qualify to make a game. And Fred Green, you can see, has 3 dots, which means that this student has no reading or math scores. And so, you know, let's say that's a mistake. We're not going to do this now, but you could jump from this page by clicking on Fred Green's name to immediately go to Fred Green's educational page and enter that missing data if that was incorrect. So, you know, without going too much deeper here, you get a really kind of usable list that you can filter by any tag and see the outcomes associated with each of these students with a lot of good rollover information. So let's actually click the back button and go back to that AFNet reports page and click on the placements report, the View Details link, just so that we can get an idea of what's in that report. So again, it's kind of presenting you information in much the same way. We're looking at a metric here and how it's calculated by scrolling over the question mark. We're seeing what tag this report was run for, what group of students. We're seeing a list of students and what their outcomes were. And we can hover over those check marks. We can organize the columns the way that Candice just did by either placed or not placed, or placed in a job, or placed in education. And let's say for sure Fred Green should have had a placement, right? So let's click on Fred Green's name and update his record because Fred should have had a placement. So we're using this report to kind of figure out what's wrong in our system. And I always pick the wrong student, so I'm really proud of myself at this point. So if we go back to the reports page one more time. So we're hoping that this is really kind of powerful for you all, and that this will give you a lot of really kind of quickly accessible reports and data about your students to allow you to do data entry better and track your outcomes more closely. So we'll be rolling out new reports, as Erin said before, at a pretty rapid pace at this point. And we know that high quality reports is probably going to be very useful for you. So definitely check out what's the existing reports that are here right now, and reach out to us and let us know what you like about the reports and what you don't like about the reports. So if there are things that we can do to improve them, we definitely want to hear that feedback from you all. So please let us know. And so now we've gone through data entry, looking at reports. Let's go back to the program overview page and do one last step. So
Fred's job.
What's that?
Fred's job.
Fred's job. Oh, right. We added Fred's job. So we've got 4 issues more on this page because we added a job placement to Fred's record here. So we're just going to quickly enter that information and get our issue counts down to 0 here. And that's because we realized Fred should have had a job placement. And so what we're doing is we're anticipating, or we're getting our data ready for verification. And data verification is how your program lets YouthBuild USA know that the data in DYB is accurate and complete. So again, we've addressed all of our issues, or we're on our way to doing that now. And we're looking at all of our groups of students to make sure that there's no issue counts there. We're also checking those groups of students on the overview page, and Candice is actually just filling out a follow-up report because the system is saying, okay, hey, Fred's got a placement, that's great. Can you just follow up with that placement too? So we're satisfying those questions. We're going back to the program overview page, and we're now seeing that all of our issue counts are satisfied, and we've got green check marks there. I just want to make one more pitch for just making sure that when you get to this page and before you verify data, that if 5 active students isn't correct, that you make updates, and if 16 students in follow-up is not correct, that you make updates there as well. So, but once you've gotten your issues down to 0 and made updates, the last step is very, very simple. You're just going to click on that verify button, and you can see that it's activated now because we have 0 issues in the system. So DYB will store information about who verified data and when, and anytime your issue counts get down to 0, the verify button will be available to you. But the verification step must be completed at least once during the month following the end of each quarter. And let me just say that one more time. The verification step must be completed at least once during the month following the end of the quarter. And this means that your first verification in DYB should be completed between July 1st and July 31st. And let's just go ahead and click on that. So we've verified our data. We get a congratulations, and it's basically saving that record that we verified our data and that our next data verification deadline is July 31st. So I know that that was a lot of information that we've just gone through, but we've gone through logging in, creating users, entering data, looking at reports, and verifying our information. And we're hoping that you've got enough information to get in there and start working right away. But we know that you're going to have a lot of questions for us. And the really great news that we have for you is that we've added a new team member to our DYB support team just in time for the launch of DYB. So Candice Cook is our new data services manager, and she brings a lot of really great real-world experience to this role, having already led youth programs. And we've also put her through a really tough orientation, and especially as we got ready for DYB launch. But she's really ready to take your questions now and learn more about the amazing work that you do at your YouthBuild program. So I'm going to pass things off to Candice now so that she can tell you more about the ways in which you can get help while you're doing all this data entry work in DYB.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Candice Cook, like Curt said, and my orientation has been really hard over here. I've been taught by Curt specifically how to make really terrible jokes during training. I'm sorry, I mean really great jokes, So one of the great things that hasn't changed with the launch of DYB is the ability for our team to give you great support no matter what part of the country you're at. And there's a few ways that we can do that. I'm going to go back to Ready Talk, or our conference here, so we can show you the screen here. This is our 2 tools that we have for you, our knowledge base, and this is the address which is located at, and also contacting DYB support. Now, the best way to get to the knowledge base is not by this address, although it is clever, dybhelp.youthbuild.org. I'll go back to our screen. Let me share my browser with you. And at the bottom of each and every single page within DYB is the little question mark link. And we had talked about this at the very beginning of the training. But let's click this now so you can see. And clicking on that will open up a new tab, and we'll launch into our knowledge base. And this is open 24/7 for you to come and scroll through and peruse. This landing page shows you how to use the knowledge base. And there's 2 ways to do it. You can search or you can browse. And just to point out some other things on this front page here, some announcements, if you need to get trained, and you guys already got trained, so you don't need to do that, right? And any other important dates will be here as well. But like I said, there's two ways to use this knowledge base. You can either search, and some folks are searchers, and I remember, oh my gosh, I really want to add a new user. I can't remember, we learned that in a training. How do we do that? So I'm going to type in add user into the search box here, hit enter, and it will come up with some article matches for us. So I can click on adding and removing users here, and this will take you through the steps of how to add a user. So if you forgot, you can come back and see it. The other way that you can look through the knowledge base to find out other information is to browse the list of topics. And I just got there by clicking on this logo up here in the top left corner, YouthBuild Data. And here's a list of topics where we already have articles written. We have a quick start guide. We have how to add and remove users. That's where we were. And you'll see some other information here. And student data entry, for example, you might think we only have 5 things written, but we have a lot. So if you can actually click View All, and there's 14 articles already written about how to do things like how to exit a student, contact information, all that kind of stuff. So once again, to get to that list of topics, you would just click on the logo up here on the left, and that shows you all the things that are there. But again, you can use the search feature as well if you have a keyword specifically you're looking for. So if you are the type of person that would just rather call somebody, it's business hours, 9 to 5 from on Eastern Standard Time, and you want to hear Kurt's voice and perhaps a really great joke, you can call this number down here at the bottom of the DYB screen. That number should look familiar to Webs2Q users. It's the same exact number, but we're not going to be talking about Webs2Q anymore. We're going to talk about DYB. And the other is also our email address, dybsupport@youthbuild.org. And a member of our team will get back to you with an answer to your question if you'd rather do it over email. The last thing that I want to point out is that when you're coming into a new system, really the only way to get to know something is to, get in there and do it yourself. So this is going to be new for all of us. And for you as users, get in there and poke around. You've got a data verification deadline for July 31st, right? So let's get in there, give yourself some time, and enter some student information. If you really felt like it, you could log in right after this training. But whenever you do decide to do it, we're here to support you in the same way that the team always has. So I am excited to answer your questions and get to know all of your programs by supporting you.